Last story of the day, which takes us to Lebanon, where the country's banking association announced they have that the nation's banks will remain closed, quote, indefinitely, end quote, after a string of unusual robberies where the only funds taken actually belong to the robbers. The Lebanese people have seen their money locked up for more than 2 years with very strict limits on what can be withdrawn from what the World Bank has called a Ponzi finance system in an August report. In that time, more than 3/4 of the population has been plunged into poverty without access to their money. Also in August, a man drew widespread attention and public support after he held up a federal bank branch and walked out with about $35,000 worth of his own money and was not charged with a crime. On Friday of last week, there were 5 more such robberies in a single day, with desperate people in some cases holding up the bank and then handing their money to family members before being arrested. This is definitely a terrible story, and again, a symptom of the financial system as it exists today, but it's one that's especially interesting, I think, in the context of comments from banking chief Jamie Dimon in our earlier story. And another important reminder on why you might actually want to be your own bank, with the ability to send and spend funds where you want, irrespective of what your banker or government would prefer. Jen, what's your take?
Yeah, I hope people are reading the story and learning from it, right? I think we grow up in a system where we are taught to trust the banks, because why wouldn't we? There's this infrastructure set up around us. It's just normal. We're taught we put our money in the bank, that's where we store it, and that's where it's safe. And then we see stories like this, where we see banking systems collapse on themselves and people all of a sudden don't have access to their money. Crypto is a solution here, but for these people in Lebanon who don't have access to their funds, they can't just go out and get crypto. It's a really sad story, right? You need access to money to buy into crypto. And so this is a really sad story. I hope people are looking at it, evaluating the situations they're in, the countries they live in, what they can tolerate, and looking at getting into crypto. But unfortunately, this is not a solution for the people in Lebanon. When I was reading the story, it made me think of the Bitcoin white paper and what was happening worldwide when the Bitcoin white paper was written. And we saw the same thing in Greece at that time, right? People in Greece were not able to get their funds out of the banks. Cyprus. And Bitcoin was born. And so there are definitely solutions out there. I hope that people who live in areas in the world who think that this will never happen to them read this and take note and are able to connect the dots. Will, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a really interesting story, and sort of paired against the backdrop of what's happening in Western countries that have more stable money. 10% inflation is not great. It's what we currently have right now, but it's pretty stable compared to what you're seeing in Lebanon, Turkey, Argentina, many other countries. An experience for those people who are buying crypto is like they're just aping into it or gaming into it, jumping into it for fun. And then typically, we see a washout cyclically. But in Lebanon, we're seeing some inklings of people jumping into crypto because they have to, right? They need to shore up their life savings. And if they don't, you have a case where a bank will close down and you can't get your money out. And there's an armed guard in the way. The only way you're going to get your money is if you storm that bank yourself, which of course nobody is wanting to do, but if you're in a desperate enough situation, that's what we're seeing people choose to do. But on the crypto point of this, I think it's important, but it does show you how immature the crypto space is, right? This is the point of a lot of crypto applications. This is the point for DeFi. This is sort of like the golden nugget in the back heads of a lot of developers' minds. They want to help out these sort of people who are in these situations. But it's not there yet, right? We still have way too much work to do, and there's still not enough safety in crypto yet. In this situation, right, if you jumped into a bunch of crypto, including Bitcoin last year, maybe you're in Lebanon thinking that Bitcoin could help you out, well, you might be down 70%. So what's the difference between being down 70% and having your money locked up in an institution that you can't get your money back from? More or less the same thing. There's not much of a difference there. And that's the unfortunate situation for a lot of these people is there are no alternatives on the table quite yet. I think in a few years there could be, and there's some things like stable coins that do exist. There's gold and stuff like that. There's alternative investments and assets. At the same time, for a lot of these people, those things are not there. They're not tangible. They don't have access to them. They still have a lot of education to get there. So whenever I'm reminded of these stories, I just think of how much work there is still to be done. Adam, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Yeah, there's definitely more work to be done, but I want to push back a little bit on a couple of those points. First off, the difference between 70% down in dollar terms is very different than whatever it's down, if it is down in Lebanese currency terms. So it's important to keep in mind that sort of the exchange rate is something for something like cryptocurrency is something that's dictated by trades happening around the world against all of these different currencies, and the exchange rates are different on a sort of case-by-case basis. Another thing worth keeping in mind is that going back to our first story from today, as I said, money is a confidence game. And if you think about it, in many ways, the banking system is itself very prone to becoming a Ponzi scheme. We have this thing called fractional reserve banking, which many viewers will be familiar with. But basically what it means is that when you put money in a bank, the bank doesn't actually have to keep your money. The bank does stuff with your money that might lock it up for a long period of time, might even lose it. And they have reserve requirements and things like that, but kind of the entire concept of traditional banking as it's been performed over the last couple of hundred years really relies on the assumption that most people who have money in a bank aren't actually going to take that money out of the bank, and so the bank doesn't need to have that much money on hand. That is pretty much the definition of an insolvent system, or at least one where sort of the liquidity of it is so poor that you can't actually service the people who are getting that service from you. And that all comes back to what's going on in Lebanon, where confidence in the banking system, confidence in the ability to get your money out has collapsed, which then makes it so everybody wants to get their money out because of this dynamic. So again, these are all dynamics that are completely different once you start talking about cryptocurrency. You can definitely create banks that accept cryptocurrency and have the same types of things, but we see examples coming out of, for example, Wyoming in the United States, where they have what are called special purpose depository institutions as a new type of bank that treats your money like a valet treats your car. When you give your keys to your car to a valet, the valet doesn't own your car. The valet can't just give you an equivalent car. They have your car, you're paying them for the service of parking your car and then recovering your car. If the valet, sells your car and buys another car, they've committed a crime. And that, again, is what the banking system should be like if it was actually how people think that the banking system works. But it's this misunderstanding of how money works. It's this misunderstanding of how banking works and how they make their money. And more importantly, it's government support of all of these things and an intentional obfuscation, with this idea of regulators and all of these people who are, in reality, we discover over and over again, captured by the exact systems, working on behalf of the exact systems that they are supposed to be representing and regulating on our behalf. So again, I think the indictment here is anybody who asserts authority to say that you should do a thing because we're the people who are the experts and just trust us. I don't trust them anymore. I don't think anybody should trust them anymore. I don't think they're deserving of trust. And I think that that's why cryptocurrency will continue to gain steam, because you don't have to trust them if you have a system that does it itself. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Will, back to you.
I love it. I love it.
No, I definitely agree with you. I do think that there is a little hopium in crypto still whenever we see these stories. And I think it's good for us to press the brakes a little bit, realize that there's still a lot of work ahead of us before crypto can really step up to these bigger stories like we're seeing in Lebanon, like we're seeing in Turkey, like we're seeing in Argentina.